Tonight on The Wrap, confusion reigns with the US and Iran at odds over the prospects over a deal to end the war. The White House rubbishes details of an apparent settlement coming out of Tehran. The president tells his cabinet he's prepared to wait.
We can make a good deal right now, but maybe not a great deal, and if it's not a great deal, we're not making it.
More woe for patients in England after resident doctors announce a new series of strikes next month. And breaking news, the Eagles soar to victory as Crystal Palace win the Conference League in Leipzig, setting up a possible European clean sweep for Premier League teams. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the former Conservative Special Advisor, Salma Shah, and the economist and broadcaster, Steve Richards. Plus, the first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Well, all of that still to come, but we want to start with the breaking news from the world of football tonight, and it's more success for English clubs in European competition after Crystal Palace beat Spanish team Rayo Vallecano to win the Conference League. Well, that means that Premier League clubs have now won 2 out of the 3 European trophies, following Aston Villa's win in the Europa League final last week. And it could, of course, be a clean sweep if Arsenal beat PSG to win the Champions League on Saturday. Well, they took the lead in the 51st minute after the Rayo Vallecano goalkeeper could only parry midfielder Adam Wharton's long-range effort straight into the path of Palace striker Jean-Philippe Mateta, sending their fans in the stadium and at home into a frenzy. And the fans at home are absolutely ecstatic at that win. Fantastic news for English football, isn't it?
Yeah, just a warning. About a year ago, my team Spurs won the Europa League. My son went to Spain to watch it. He bumped into the Blue Labour Lord Glassman, who slept in a doorway in euphoria as Spurs won. And last weekend, we only just escaped relegation.
Yes.
So be warned, it doesn't necessarily lead to glitter forever.
But can enjoy the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just, OK, let's not go in the whole doom and gloom,
just
shall
for
we?
those who have an instinct for misery, I just thought I would mention that. But no, it's exciting. And, you know, as I'm Spurs fan, I hope Arsenal win at the weekend. I mean, it would be an Yeah, I do, actually.
As a
I'm not
Spurs fan,
tribal.
you can actually
I'm not
say
tribal.
that.
It's international now. It's international. I think we can all safely say
global.
that we need the good news, don't we, really?
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah.
OK, should we go and get some actual action from the pitch side? Let's go to Selhurst Park in South London. Our correspondent, Amelia Harper, who looks like she's struggling to hear anything. I hope she can hear me. Amelia, what is the atmosphere like there? I mean, we can see, actually.
Yeah, it is absolutely crazy. Right here, we have a pitch invasion. This is what it means to Crystal Palace fans. They have won the Conference League. They have won. I'm told you can't quite hear me. Crystal Palace have won the Conference League. This is their first trophy in Europe that this club has seen ever. This was their biggest match of the season. Everybody has come onto the pitch now for a friendly pitch invasion post-match. Their team has been playing all the way over in Germany, but the way this crowd have been shouting, means that this team have heard them all the way over in Germany. What's your reaction to what's happened?
Mate, it's amazing. It's just, my heart's pounding. It's amazing to be here. The atmosphere is crazy. I mean, what more could I want?
What more could they want? Exactly. Well, this has been a really important match for this team. They won the FA Cup in order to actually get here. Let's have a look around, though, I think. If we can keep going around, you can get an idea of the atmosphere. It was 0-0 at half-time. They came back fighting. Crystal Palace got their first goal just before 50 minutes. There were a couple of close calls just moments later. this is not the competition that this team wanted to be in. They wanted to be in the higher-ranked Europa League. We've got a lovely family here who want to have a chat with us. Give us your reaction to their win.
I can't believe we just did that. We just did it 2 times in a row. First the World Cup, now the European Cup. Wowzers!
How are you feeling, Dad?
Oh, it's amazing. Like, my dad and my granddad never saw us win anything, and my kids have seen us win 3 trophies in the space of a year. It's unbelievable.
The manager's on his way out. Is that a regretful choice now that you've had this?
Whatever he does, good luck to him. What he's done for us as a club is unbelievable, and he'll always have the respect of the fans. Like, it's been amazing.
Emotional night for you then?
Oh, emotional, yeah, it's not the words.
What about you? Happy?
Are you happy? The Eagles!
Well, there we go. Everybody here absolutely thrilled. Their win tonight means that they are heading up to the next rung of European football. They are headed to the Europa League next, but for everybody here, they're going to spend the whole night celebrating, that's for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that quote. Wowzers. And that little boy, my heart was pounding. Yeah. Well, should we take a look at the winning moment? We've got the pictures. Let's have a replay of that. Sheer joy and probably disbelief from many of the fans. So close, but I mean, within, as you were saying, Steve, you know, within the grasp, but it could so easily be lost.
What subsequently, you mean, in terms of what happens next? It is really interesting football, and all those young kids, you say, it's very moving, you know, because it does give a sort of fleeting, unqualified joy, doesn't it? I mean, it's all irrational. I mean, none of us know these players, and all, but briefly, it does create a sense of collective excitement that you don't get in much of life these days.
No, absolutely. That sense of euphoria is hard to replicate, isn't it?
What I thought was interesting was Dad there saying, you know, his granddad and his dad didn't see them witness, you know, anything, but his children have managed to see 3 victories. So I think, you know, going back to your earlier point, Steve, it's fantastic. But of course, you know, they're used to winning, so let's hope that they carry on for their sakes and that there isn't a downward turn at some point.
I mean, in terms of what you were saying, that it does lift the spirit. Even you're not tribal in terms of football clubs, but it does lift everybody's spirit, doesn't it? Because it's success, particularly for England clubs. This is one of 3 that will go through to making championships within Europe.
Yeah, although it's interesting to see the World Cup is about to start with England again and indeed Scotland. And there's going to be high excitement, but I've got a feeling that, because England never win the World Cup, apart from '66, that we almost, sorry to go on about misery, but we almost enjoy the build-up and then the defeat, the inevitable defeat, you know, the missed penalty.
Do we enjoy the defeat?
Yeah, I think we do. On one level, I think we enjoy the misery because...
I think that's just you, Steve.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
I've not heard this type of analysis before.
Yeah, no, it's delving deep here into the psyche of us all. I don't know whether we would quite be able to cope with England, say, winning the World Cup. But in the Premiership, there are these teams. I mean, the Premiership is drowning in money. I mean, these are well-paid players and teams. And they've been doing well for a long time now in these competitions.
So all eyes on Arsenal on Saturday. Could they win the Champions League? Are you a Gooner?
No, I'm not.
Who do you support, Sam? Do you support a team?
I do, Accrington Stanley.
Oh, yeah, well, there. Now
Yeah.
Now you're talking.
No, I don't remember the advert, but it has haunted me forever. But it's my hometown. That is my team.
Really?
So always one for Accrington Stanley. But I've got to say, you're absolutely right on the Premier League. It is. It has a lot of money. It has a lot of investment, and it's really good to see that paying off across Europe. And I think that's going to give, you know, brand Britain and export powers, you know, a real boost, and just as we need it as a nation.
OK, should we turn to more serious fare now and international politics and the war in Iran? The long and confused journey to a potential peace deal between the US and Iran continued today with Iranian state TV publishing details of a potential agreement. That was quickly rubbished by the White House, with Donald Trump telling his cabinet this evening that he was in no rush to make a deal that wasn't perfect.
It's got to be perfect. I'm not going to do this. I didn't do this to get a crummy agreement. We can make a good deal right now, but maybe not a great deal. And if it's not a great deal, we're not making it. So, because we can make a great deal with this guy right here. And but it's, you know, it's a lot nastier. Probably wouldn't go as quickly. Wouldn't be talking about as quickly, but it would be foolproof. But I think we're doing very well, Steve. I think we're doing pretty well in terms of the negotiation, but we'll see.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent now, David Blevins, who's in Washington, D.C. for us. And David, what are we to believe? Are the Americans and the Iranians any closer to an agreement tonight?
I'm not sure they are, Gillian. This report of a draft deal is only coming from one source. It really only addresses one issue, and that is the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. And to a large extent, it is what you would expect the Iranians to be saying right now if they wanted to create the impression that they had brokered a great deal. So not entirely surprising that the White House is dismissing it as total fabrication, telling us not to believe it because, in their words, facts matter. And they do, but we're not getting many facts from the President of the United States either. During that cabinet meeting, he said Iran wants to make a deal. They're not there yet, but they will get there. Otherwise, we will just have to finish the job. So again, threatening a resumption of war. On reports that a draft deal could lead to the US military lifting its blockade and shipping returning to normal in the Strait of Hormuz under the control of Iran and Oman, President Trump said it'll be under the control of no one because it's international waters and Iran will have to behave or we will, quote, blow them up. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was a little more conciliatory. He said there had been some progress. We would find out in the coming hours and days if there was going to be a deal. The cabinet meeting at the White House lasted 1 hour, 20 minutes. For me, the most telling thing was the fact that they talked as much about Venezuela and Cuba as they did about Iran. Perhaps that's because they don't have very much to say about Iran and the prospects of a deal right now.
Indeed, David, for the moment, thank you very much. Well, Salma and Steve, very mixed messages coming out of the White House today, them completely disregarding the statements from Iran that were broadcast on Iranian state TV and saying that there is some progress, despite saying, you know, that those statements were false. Marco Rubio, as David was saying, a bit more conciliatory, saying that there has been some progress.
Yeah, I mean, David's a brilliant Washington correspondent, and I tune in most evenings, and he's having to analyse some claim or other in regard to that. It's becoming surreal. So a few days ago, I don't know if you were on, Gillian, you know, Trump was saying he had got a deal. And then some of his people were saying, well, hold on a second, this deal is not as good even as the Obama deal that you have condemned unequivocally. So that went away. Now we've got this claim from Iran that there's a deal that Trump is sort of disowning. And Washington correspondents have to pop up every night. It's been going on for months, interpreting what appear to be sort of fantasy claims from one side or the other. The depressing thing is the resolution to this nightmare is by no means clear, and that's still the case tonight.
What the Iranians broadcasted was that in their framework, Iran would restore commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz to pre-war levels within a month, and also the US would withdraw their military presence and cease the blockade.
Yeah, I think what we've got to assess here is whose interest is this in and what are they trying to push on at the moment. And it's very telling when the US president sort of makes certain statements because the Iranians are clearly attempting to apply pressure from a domestic perspective. We know that there are midterms in the US. We know that the pressure on US consumers, in fact, global consumers, we're feeling it here too, will be a huge pressure point for democratic nations. And pressing that point consistently to say there is a way out and crystallising it so that perhaps the White House is forced to take that decision, I think has prompted the president to really double down and come out with these statements where he is saying this is about nuclear weapons, this is about the safety of the world, not just US interests, and I'm not interested in what happens to the consumer because it's that important. So there are nuances and pivots in his positioning, because clearly there is a motivation to get it done. But the pressure, I think the Iranians think, is going to come from the economic pressure that's being exerted to force the US hand. And just one more point, if I can quickly, Gillian. We can't separate this from the sort of wider nexus of other conflicts you just talked about, Cuba, Venezuela. There is also the dynamic of what is then going to happen in Russia, Ukraine, and then also what could then consequently happen with China and Taiwan. So all of this has to be tied together in some way. It's not just about the economic pressure, but what it does to those conflicts all around the world.
The objectives for this war were quite muddy in the beginning and haven't got any clearer as we go along. One of them is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the conflict began. Another is that Iran doesn't have the proficiency to develop nuclear weapons and to move away from the Obama deal, which, quite frankly, if that was offered to Donald Trump now, he'd bite their hands off.
Bite their hands off, having condemned the Obama deal. And you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the ominous signs at the beginning was the lack of clarity as to what the war aims were. And as you say, one of the aims now in these negotiations is the opening of this area, which has now been closed off. So Iran has discovered leverage that it didn't know it had before. And it is a complete disaster. The US and Israel had, or Netanyahu had different objectives to Trump. And therefore, sort of establishing an end game becomes even harder in a way when you weren't sure what you were trying to do in the first place.
Well, this is also fascinating because, of course, you do also have the White House pressuring other Arab and other Southeast Asian nations into normalising their relations with Israel. So you cannot take that dimension out of it, because there are still incursions into Lebanon on the Israeli side, and so the situation in the Middle East doesn't seem to be getting any less volatile, and the fractures between nations that were attempting to normalise seem to be wider than ever. And I think that is really critical in thinking about how that dynamic is either going to, within the region, is going to push to a solution, or actually people are really going to entrench into their widened positions.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see those Arab nations, their response to Donald Trump saying that he's not going to sign any peace deal until they normalise relationships with Israel.
Well, I mean, I think they've roundly rejected it so far, but so far. Let's see if they do move. You're right.
OK, let's move on to domestic politics. And resident doctors in England have announced they will go back on strike next month as part of their long-running pay and jobs dispute with the government. The British Medical Association says doctors will walk out from the 15th to the 19th of June. And they warn that further strikes could come in July if progress on a deal isn't made.
I don't want to beat about the bush. We are facing a genuine crisis in medicine from a workforce perspective at the minute. I think it's absurd that we are talking about literally hundreds, if not thousands, of doctors actively looking to leave the NHS in just a few weeks. We're saying we can look to avoid that by offering jobs, bringing jobs onto the market, giving people more secure employment, and crucially valuing them for the work that they're doing.
Well, the decision to strike hasn't gone down well inside government. Here's the response from the Health Secretary, James Murray.
Well, the offer on the table for this year is as far as we're going to go. It's 4.9% on average increase, over 7% for some of the lowest paid. And to be clear, that's on top of a 28.9% increase over the last 3 years. I think most people would see that as being a very good offer, and going any further is simply unaffordable and not realistic. When it comes to other aspects of the offer, as I made clear to the Resident Doctors Committee today, my door is open to discussing that to make sure we can do the best for resident doctors across the country.
Well, the Health Secretary saying that it's totally avoidable and unnecessary, and the government simply can't afford it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, up until a couple of weeks ago, Wes Streeting was the Health Secretary, and he tonally was very robust with the BMA. James Murray is a much more mild-mannered figure, but the message is the same. They haven't got the money to meet this, and it comes on top of the very big pay award that was given immediately or very soon after the 24 general election. So on, of course, a much smaller scale than what we were just talking about, the nature of the coming together here is very unclear, and it's a sort of running theme, and the government is investing tons of money in the NHS, and yet this disruption sort of threatens to jeopardise some of it.
The 28% pay rise that they were given, that the Labour administration gave them actually very soon into their administration, not seen as enough. And because of that, public sympathy has waned for resident doctors, junior doctors of old, but resident doctors now. There is no public sympathy for this strike, is there?
No, but even though there's no public sympathy, if the BMA resident doctors pass their thresholds and decide that they are going to take strike action, there is going to be massive public consequence because of what it will do to surgery, to waiting times, etc. So there is a really meaningful consequence, and there isn't really anything that you can do to prevent it. The macro factor here is the instability in government, because can we honestly say that there isn't a motivation to go back with a new health secretary and think about trying again, because Wes Streeting as health secretary was so firm about saying no more, and whether James Murray might take a different tack or different
exactly the same thing.
Right now he is, but if he's faced with the strikes, does it bring him back to the negotiating table? I hope that they will stay firm on it, because the underlying logic of it is fair. There isn't enough money to pay for further rises. It is going to have a big detrimental impact on colleagues and the health service more broadly. But the instability of government means that actually you may see more of this kind of action coming back when what the government thought it was doing was dealing with it early and trying to get themselves on an even keel. So strategically, in terms of political strategy, this is actually quite a danger zone, because we are still really in limbo about what may or may not happen with the Labour leadership.
Steve, what about Kemi Badenoch's idea to ban doctors from striking at all, similar to police officers that can't strike? She thinks they shouldn't be allowed.
Well, you've just had a quote from the BMA saying that loads of doctors are going to leave Britain. Now, I wonder about that in the context of this particular dispute. But I think if something like that was attempted, there would be consequences. So I don't think it's workable, to be honest. There is an argument, that essential services, the police can't strike.
No.
So you could argue this is as much a service as that. But this issue of retention, which is an important part of all of this, would become really, really tough.
Just very quickly, Isalma, do you agree with that Conservative policy? Because they've repeated their calls today for a ban on doctors striking.
Yeah, I understand the motivation exactly for that reason, the essential service levels. I think there probably is a negotiation that you can have about what kind of service levels you should maintain. But fundamentally, I've always believed that the right to withdraw your labour is the right thing to be able to do. And as a Tory, I've always maintained that. I don't think unions are a bad thing. I think not everything is run effectively, and we might not agree with one another, but an individual's right to withdraw their labour is fundamental.
Interesting difference in opinion on the Tory bench there. Well, this time last night, we were talking about Tony Blair's critique of the country and the political system. It's predictably provoked quite a response, including from Andy Burnham, who said Sir Tony didn't understand modern politics, and from Wes Streeting, who said that the missing word in the Blair essay was inequality. We also had this from the Green Party leader, Zach Polanski, speaking to our political correspondent, Rob Powell.
Well, I think it was 5,600 words too many. Tony Blair is a former Prime Minister that dragged this country into an illegal war in Iraq. And I think it's pretty grotesque to see him selling the future of our children and grandchildren down the river through the kind of climate delay tactics, talking down clean energy and the security that we need. And I just don't think this is a sensible intervention in a day where we're speaking in these extreme temperatures, to have someone who should hold a position of responsibility, or a former position of responsibility, to be speaking like this.
I mean, this wasn't all just privatisation in the Iraq War. Is there nothing that you can glean from it that you think you could, learn from? This guy did win 3 elections, after all.
I think there are positive things, and so it's important to put that nuance in there. But to hear the rejection of neoliberalism, I think misses the entire point. That Thatcher sold off our public services on a bonfire of services, whether it's our water companies or our energy companies, and normal people have paid the price ever since.
Steve, do you think his criticism of Tony Blair's essay, do you think that is warranted? Is it fair?
Zach Polanski's. I think the much more significant response is the responses from Andy Burnham and Wes Streeting, because they are part of what appears to be an embryonic leadership contest. We will have to see whether it actually happens. And I think what we are seeing, finally, is a move away from the sort of New Labour era. We had Peter Mandelson, who was a big influence on the early Starmer period, sacked from Washington, etc., etc. And now we're having people like Wes Streeting, who were close to Blair, distancing himself from what I think was a rather... He talks about a lack of a coherent plan. I think we haven't got time to explore it in depth, but I think his ideas were contradictory, incoherent, kind of... He keeps on saying there's no left or right, but then he says Labour are moving to the left, and that's the wrong response when the country's moving to the right. And yet, is the country moving to the right when Zach Polanski is picking up votes and winning a by-election in the seat that Burnham wanted? I think Blair is brilliant at conveying a sense of clarity, which is actually nowhere near as clear as it appears to be.
That's an interesting...
But you can't get away from the fact that the response of Zach Polanski is really interesting, because that is where the soft left that Tony Blair thought he had shifted, in the same way that, David Cameron thought he'd brought the Tories into the centre ground, that hasn't lasted. And so sort of what Polanski says will be, funnily enough, quite potent to a lot of those Labour MPs who've even talked about defection if Andy Burnham doesn't become the next leader of the Prime Minister of the country and the leader of the Labour Party. So I think, really, Zach Polanski on this side, much like Nigel Farage on the right, has this outsized influence on what Labour MPs might end up doing. So I think the fact that he's just got this very headline rejection, going back to the Iraq War, discrediting Tony Blair, will have a lot of resonance with a generation like us, well, younger than us, who didn't witness Blair in his prime as Prime Minister.
I think the most cutting line from Andy Burnham in all of this is that Sir Tony Blair doesn't understand modern politics.
Well, it's like going to a family wedding. They've just won the election, but all this simmering resentment that's been there, everybody's had a drink and they've all now...
Bubbling up to the surface. Bubbling up to the surface. Coming up next, we're going to take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us if you can.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
But I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Let's bring you some breaking news straight away, and we're able to bring you details of a report that's going to land tomorrow from the former Labour Health Secretary Alan Milburn about the growing problem of so-called NEETs. That's young people not in education, employment or training. We'll get more in a moment, but first, we've been speaking to young people in Dudley. Here's a flavour of what they told us.
The job market is just horrible. It's shocking. Like on Indeed, all you see, people make TikToks about it, joking about it all the time on my For You page. It's care, army. Or you could be a retail manager, but you haven't got the experience, so you can't apply for those jobs. There's no jobs you can apply for. I feel like the teachers are very out of touch with what the kids are going through nowadays. Like, it's really hard in this generation, especially.
Well, we'll hear more voices like that in the next hour. But first, our political correspondent, Alex Rogers, joins us now. And tell us a bit more about this report from a Labour Party grandee.
So Alan Milburn sort of laying out how bad the situation is. The full report lands tomorrow. Here are the kind of key warnings. He warns that the number of young people not working or learning could reach 1.25 million by 2031, up from 1 million currently. And he warns of a bedroom generation and a lost generation. And the picture that he paints for young people now is really stark. He's saying that the entry-level jobs that we were kind of used to, working in a pub or a restaurant, are just completely drying up because the economy is so poor. So 1.6 fewer low and medium-skilled jobs, vacancies in hospitality halving. And he's very clear that this is not the fault of young people. He says this is not the failure of young people. This is the failure of a system stuck in the past and unable to meet the needs of young people now. And I think it just speaks, Gillian, to like the wider barrage of issues facing young people. The cost of university going up, the interest, the eye-watering interest on student loans, rents rising. It really does feel like young people are bearing the brunt of a struggling economy, and that's what these findings lay bare at the moment.
But Salma, it's interesting that he's saying it's not the fault of young people. It's a system that's broken, essentially.
Well, I mean, I'd be really intrigued to read the full report on this, because I think what are the solutions is the first question that I would ask. But also, what does he actually mean structurally? Because we're also talking about a generation who probably were coming of age during a pandemic. So that is also something that we need to bear in mind around what lockdown did, particularly to education at that time. I think we also need to understand structurally in the economy, what can we actually do that's going to assist people into those vacancies? So it ties into that question of low-skilled migration coming in and sort of supporting the hospitality sector. What are we doing actually to help upskill people, to get them into those jobs and make them really productive to be able to work their way up the career ladder? I think most of us could probably recognise what he's saying. I think there's probably experience within our own families, within our widest communities and societies that bears his findings to be true. I think the question is, what are the issues? And if that is basically going to be around more government spending, is it going to be productive government spending? Would be the things that I would be looking to understand before we raise any specific challenges.
One of the things he is saying, Steve, is that anxiety linked to social media is driving economic inactivity amongst young people. So we get back to the social media argument.
Yeah, well, that's one issue, and that, as I bet you discussed that last night, you know, whether you should ban teenagers from access to some of these things. But, I mean, as Salma suggests, we all know the challenges. I mean, at stepping the furthest back, you know, and again, this is a bit of a cliche now, but the amount of help older people get, compared to young people, triple lock pensions, free bus passes, free train things, third off train fares. And then you see the challenges young people have faced, some of which you've just outlined. There are other things, rent, if you go to university, student fees, it's going up and up. And so at a very basic level, I think there needs to be a focus much more on how government can help young people compared to the focus on older people who vote. But then the specifics are far more challenging. If jobs that we probably all did, you know, working in a pub and all that, they are all gone, what replaces them? And what is the impact? Blair's right about AI. It's not that original idea, but loads of jobs are going to go through AI. So how can government help in these areas? Now, maybe this is it in the report? Does he come up with a load of propositions as well?
Actually, the recommendations aren't expected to be set out until later in the year. So I think this is him just sort of setting out an overview.
The scale of the problem.
Yeah.
But how has the government responded to
Well, they've welcomed the report and they say that they acknowledge everything's in it. They would point to things that they've done, including a youth employment scheme where businesses get a grant if they employ someone who's out of work but looking for work. They would also point to things like the minimum wage. You know, they've tried to increase the minimum wage, but we know that's one of the cost pressures on businesses that are forcing some of them to close. So it really is a kind of catch-22 situation there as well.
But this is going to be the perennial question that comes up, is that the single most important thing that any government can do to assist with all of these issues is to work out how to get the economy growing.
Yeah.
And the sort of instinct always to think, I'll pull a lever that deals with this very narrow issue here, rather than looking at how we support the wider economy, I think is really difficult. I mean, even though he's not been Prime Minister for such a long time, obviously Tony Blair still looms large over the things that he's saying. So he's actually challenging everything that the Labour government is doing, whether it's on net zero, you know, whether it's around, you know, the AI issue and sort of thinking about how he's moving the Labour Party more to the centre in terms of policy. Fundamentally, the thing that, you know, Blairism was about was the economy and supporting the economy. And I think a lot of businesses and a lot of people who are taking that risk and sort of saying to the government, we would hire people if they had the skills to be able to do it. We would hire people if you didn't constrain our balance sheet so much with the new NICS charges that they brought in almost in the first budget, then this would not be a problem that we would be suffering with to this extent.
That is all true, but the nature of work is changing, and so that has to be addressed. And as I said, there are these other issues: the cost of housing, the shortage of housing, are also issues that affect the young far more than other
and many of the young never
generations.
expecting to own a home in their lifetime because of the current situation. So all of those things maybe attributing or adding to
it's a hugely
anxieties.
complex set of challenges.
We are going to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers now. Well, starting with the Mail, which leads with this report, landing tomorrow from former Labour Health Secretary Alan Milburn over the issue of young people not in education, employment or training. Front page of The Express is Sir Tony Blair branding Ed Miliband's net zero plans a fantasy amidst rising bills and prices. Temperature falls, costs rise. That's the lead story in tomorrow's Metro as we learn the price cap is going up 13%
Oh, thanks.
this summer.
I'm a bit overwhelmed by my notes.
Be safe in water or more will die. A stark warning as 7 children die in water-related incidents during heatwave. The Financial Times is leading with the news that the official fund for Donald Trump's Board of Peace is empty, which could leave its plans to rebuild Gaza in limbo. And on the front of the Star, it's a coming drone. This is the news that England's World Cup base in Kansas City will be guarded by hunter-catcher drones to stop rival teams spying on training. Oh, my goodness. The world of espionage meets football. We'll see if we can have a little chat about that story. But we're going to start with the Metro and heating bills up. Britain's gone balmy. Millions of families face a scorching 13% rise in bills for heating their homes from the end of as early as next month, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, the juxtaposition of Britain sizzling in heat and the heating bills going up, that's not the connection. You know, it's not going up because it would be daft, wouldn't it, if we were all sort of spending a fortune on heating, you know, as temperatures reach 34 degrees. And as the paper goes on to point out, wholesale prices have soared since what we were just talking about earlier, the war in Iran and the blocking in the Strait of Hormuz. And until that's resolved, this is going to be a huge issue, the cost of energy. When, if it's resolved, as Trump keeps on saying, you know, some of these prices will come down. Now, it doesn't mean there will be other pressures on energy, but that is one of the main factors driving energy costs at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. As Ofgem claim also, a typical household's electricity and gas costs will go up £18 a month to about £221 a year, and to an annual cost of £1,862. Significant rise.
Yeah, huge. And I think the issue here is not just the fact that we know that this conflict is going to have a massive impact on not just energy prices, but consumer prices across the piece. But what can the government actually credibly do about it? Now, the Conservative position's always been very clear on this, which is we need to help people in terms of the cost on their bill that comes from government, whether it's sort of, you know, the net zero cost, if you like, on the bill, and thinking about our energy security longer term, which is, to lend a phrase, drill, baby, drill, in the North Sea, to think about how we secure our own supply. And I think the government does need to start taking that a little bit more seriously, because it doesn't look like we're going to see an end to what's happening in Iran. Even if we see an end to it for the duration, it actually forces us to think about where is our energy supply and our security in a way that I don't think we've had to for a long time.
But Salma, you say the Conservative position is very clear. It's a relatively recent Conservative position. I mean, relatively recently, they were in favour of this net zero target, and Boris Johnson was absolutely committed to it. Well, ultimately, absolutely committed to it. So it's a relatively recent Tory position. And in terms of North Sea oil, how sure are you that there is still this oil ready to be tapped that would make Britain protected from external price shocks? I mean, there's no evidence that there is, and drilling is continuing anyway.
So this is not about the North Sea oil option being the long-term option. It is about being able to manage our transition to something. And I would always philosophically support where we want to go in terms of net zero, but there is a practical question that's in front of us about cost of living for people that we can't just avoid, because it's going to be real pain. And as much as I support the objectives of net zero, we absolutely have to consider the reality for the people out there, including everyone here, who is going to have to face that cost.
But if the government
it doesn't mean you've got to give up on your climate objective. It just means you've got to be realistic.
Tomorrow, you know, what's the Trump phrase? Drill, baby, drill in the North Sea. A, there's quite a lot of drilling going on anyway, and B, any subsequent drilling would not address this immediate crisis. It takes ages, you know, to find where this oil is and get it out. So I keep on hearing, oh yeah, well, that's the solution, but it can't be. For the short term.
It's certainly not an overnight solution. Let's move on to the Mirror and this warning coming off the back of the deaths that we've seen in this hot weather, this freak hot weather that we've been having. Be safe in water or more will die. That's the warning on the front page of the Mirror, Salma.
I know, yeah, and it's terrible and it's tragic, and it's really important that we talk about this. And kudos to the Mirror for putting it on the front page, because it's not something that necessarily will impact everyone, but people need to be aware, because this is a proper public safety issue in terms of outdoor swimmers and the risks that they're taking because of risk to life, because of drownings, because people have decided in the hot weather they can just go off and take a dip. So I think everybody's got to be really careful about managing some of the risks that they're taking, and that it's not going to be just necessarily an idyllic swim out there. Take the right safety precautions.
Indeed.
And I think the government should do something that just gives a bit of a public message about the safe way of swimming outdoors. Steve, take us to the FT, and Trump's Gaza Board of Peace appears to have run out of money.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Blair, we'll keep on referring to, but he was interviewed today about this essay, and he was asked, he's on one level of this Gaza peace initiative. I don't think he's on the board as such, but the one below. And it seems to me, again, we were talking about Iran, the lack of clarity about the role of this board, how it would function, and as the FT suggests, who would finance it, has been unclear from the very beginning. And it again is a worry. I mean, it always had elements of absurdity to it. You know, when you looked at some of the people who were going to be in this board of peace, weren't known as peacemakers. But it was the agent for which a kind of very fragile, not brilliantly imposed ceasefire had taken place. And yet nothing seems to be happening with this board of peace.
And more importantly, funds were to be used to help projects rebuild Gaza, so they are all on hold now.
Yeah, I mean, and it was supposed to be managed by the World Bank as well, and so, you know, sources have said that $0 have been deposited. So even the sort of charitable humanitarian aims of this, which might have been a reason to support, you know, this board, don't seem to be functioning. And I think that it goes back to that whole thing about talking big but not delivering very much. And I think if we are going to back something like this, and indeed if Sir Tony Blair was going to be part of this board of peace, perhaps one should go and search in his 5,000 words to see if it's mentioned.
Shall we end with something a little lighter? The Star, the England football team's training camp, will be policed by drones to deter other drones. What's happening, Steve?
Well, it just shows that we're in this sort of drone era, and it is interesting. You know, all this talk about we've got to get up to 5% of GDP on defence and so on. And drones seem to be a really effective way of protecting. I'm not comparing protecting the England football team with protecting an entire country, but I sort of am, actually. You know, I mean, they are very, you know, it's the new technology. But,
I'd like to see how
drones
this works,
to deter
though.
other drones is all getting a bit surreal.
It's quite sci-fi, isn't it? I think it looked quite... I mean, are we going to start seeing these drone wars in the sky above pitches and things like that? I'm quite intrigued by it.
To stop rival teams spying. It's
especially as viewers who were here from the beginning know, England are going to lose anyway. So we're going to spend all this on drones.
Can we get a drone to pick him up with negativity and get him out?
Yes, let's order one. So let us tell you what's coming up. We're going to be talking about the daring rescue of 5 villagers trapped in a flooded cave for over a week. Do stay with us.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, OK?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. Been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty.
War isn't pretty.
5 villagers stuck in a flooded cave in central Laos for more than a week have been found alive, with 2 still missing. This video appears to show the villagers when they were found by rescue workers, each wearing a headlamp and sitting on a rock surrounded by floodwater. They were trapped after heavy rain triggered flash flooding but blocked the exit. And this footage shows the moment the rescue divers returned to the surface after successfully locating some of those trapped. Divers who took part in the complicated 2018 rescue of a Thai junior football team are part of this team. But it's just remarkable, and the fact that they're the same rescue workers who took part in that previous rescue, they must have drawn on everything that they required the first time round on this occasion.
It's sort of really striking, isn't it? The complexity of human achievement to be able to deal with and cope with as what could have been a tragedy, and to rescue people out of what seems like a hopeless situation. And the fact that they're able to capture that knowledge as well and be able to apply it in different places, I think is really important, because that's the one thing that's really fundamental to progress, is being able to understand what worked last time and how you apply it to different situations. But very glad that people have been found, and hopefully the final 2 missing people will be brought out as well.
Yes, we pray for that. But the mental strength that those who were trapped must have had to stay alive and believe that they would be rescued, because you imagine that the dark thoughts that would be going through their minds sitting there.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's a nightmare, which had a happy ending in their cases. And I suppose in these situations, which are beyond imagination, you acquire hope, don't you? You have to, I guess. And these geniuses came in, these courageous people. We were saying the claustrophobia alone would put us off doing this kind of stuff, even if we had the skill. And the fact they've done it twice in these sort of high-profile cases. And, of course, now with modern technology and phones and everything, these moments can be recorded. So these pictures are extraordinary, really.
No, they are. And as I say, we pray that the remaining 2 are also found alive and well.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the heat will build again in the south tomorrow, but we won't beat yesterday's record. Then temperatures will gradually drop, returning to near average by Sunday. Expect another largely fine and warm start tomorrow, but southwestern parts will be rather murky. A few showers will affect central Britain. They'll fade through the morning to leave most places dry. There'll be plenty of sunshine, but misty low cloud will linger across parts of Ireland and southwest Britain, especially Irish Sea coasts. Northern and eastern parts will be warmer than today, and it'll be hot over central and south-eastern England again. 33 Celsius is possible in London or the East Midlands. The afternoon will be largely fine, but the west of Ireland and southern Britain will see a few thundery showers. Friday looks cloudier across Britain, with a few showers possible, locally thundery. It won't be as hot as recently.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up, former Health Secretary Alan Milburn warns almost 1 million young people have been locked out of work, education and training, and it's set to rise.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to warn.
But I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Tonight on The Wrap, fears of a lost generation of young people in a new report commissioned by the government. Former Labour Minister Alan Milburn warns that the number of 16 to 24-year-olds not earning or learning could top 1.25 million in the next 5 years, with the first rung of the career ladder simply out of reach.
I feel like the teachers are very out of touch with what the kids are going through nowadays. Like, it's really hard in this generation especially.
Tonight, the White House rubbishes details of an apparent peace settlement coming out of Tehran. The president tells his cabinet he's prepared to wait.
We can make a good deal right now, but maybe not a great deal, and if it's not a great deal, we're not making it.
The cost of the war in Ukraine to Russia revealed as new British intelligence estimates that almost 500,000 Russian soldiers have been killed since the conflict began. And Crystal Palace are European champions after winning the UEFA Conference League final in Leipzig. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the former Conservative Special Advisor, Salma Shah, and the economist and broadcaster, Steve Richards. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Good evening. The UK faces the prospect of a lost generation. That's the warning from a report commissioned by the government into the problem of so-called NEETs, young people not in education, employment or training. The review by former Labour Health Secretary Alan Milburn projects that the number of 16 to 24-year-olds not earning or learning will rise to 1.25 million within the next 5 years. Responsibility lies with a system, the report says, that is stuck in the past. Can you identify with that analysis, Salma?
Look, I think there might be elements of that I think are true, but reading the front page of the Times, a quote from Alan Milburn says that we're facing a generational fault line and that the schools, the health system and the labour market are no longer fit for purpose. And the whole concept of the problem seems so vast that it doesn't really prioritise the things that the government should be focusing on. Now, the recommendations for this report are going to come out later, but I think setting something out that is really challenging for people without saying what can be done about it, I think leaves a sense of hopelessness rather than saying that here are the things that we're going to tackle. Yes, we see this happening to a lot of people. We'll know people that are struggling with this, but it's not so seismic an issue that we can't focus on what we need to do in order to change it.
Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, Salma spells out the sort of massive challenges, but actually the report, again, according to the front of the Times, is precise about the main driving force, which is school absence and exclusion. So there's a relatively narrow cause of the various driving forces. There's that very precise one, which presumably can be addressed. I mean, even that's complicated, but not as challenging as sorting out those big areas that Salma identified.
But here's the thing: it says a lot in this, which I think is really difficult to take in. So on one hand, they're saying that universities are no longer a path to social mobility. I think a lot of universities would challenge that in terms of the education that they're producing. So there seems to be a lot of blame that's apportioned here without actually understanding the barriers and the challenges that some of these institutions are facing, which is, really sad, I think. And then it does talk about that the welfare system is exacerbating inactivity. OK, well, if that's the analysis, I'd be really interested to see what the recommendations are as a consequence of that. But I think just talking in these broad terms makes it feel like it's such a big problem that there isn't very much that we can do about it. But I don't think that's the case. But the apportioning of the blame around universities and the fact that it's about people that could be on the lower end of the income spectrum, but also university graduates as well, shows that actually it is quite a big issue, but we need to be more precise about what we're doing.
Well, let's hear from some of those concerned in that age bracket. Our correspondent, Phoebe Southworth, went to Dudley in search of NEETs. Here's her report.
Almost 1 million young people in the UK are part of what is being called a lost generation. They're not in employment, education or training. So how has this happened? Well, we're here in Dudley, where many 16 to 24-year-olds find themselves in exactly that situation.
Alex grew up in care and left school at 16.
I've got at least probably about 2 friends who got jobs out of 20 or 30.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, man. And that's only because they've got it from family, because their dad works with them or something, you know what I mean? I can apply for universal credit, but I've already done it, but I don't want to stay in that for even longer than 2-3 months. I want to find a job ASAP, you know what I mean? I don't want to be on the dole. At this point, I might as well go into the army, you know what I mean? Because that's the only thing that's on these job application websites, because you don't need any experience.
Unless something is urgently done, the number of young people in this position is predicted to rise to 1 in 6 in the next 5 years. But the majority really want to work.
It's a catch-22. Young people are being told they don't have enough experience when they apply for jobs. But how will they get that experience if they can't get a job?
The job market is just horrible. It's shocking. Like on Indeed, all you see, people make TikToks about it, joking about it all the time on my For You page. It's care, army. Or you could be a retail manager, but you haven't got the experience, so you can't apply for those jobs. There's no jobs you can apply for.
Courtney went to 7 different schools within a few years because of her disruptive behaviour. She thinks she'd have kept studying and got a job if she'd had the right support.
I feel like the teachers are very out of touch with what the kids are going through nowadays. Like, it's really hard in this generation especially. By the time I was in year 11, I was going into school for an hour a week. So really, I knew there was no chance of me passing my GCSEs. I only sat 2 of mine.
And for some who do finish school, the struggle to find work can lead them down a path of crime to make money.
Some of my friends, they didn't go to college. They left after school, stopped learning, and now they can't really find a job because of that. And obviously now their life, they might resort to something illegal, something that's not good for them, So it's, that's how it goes.
Cycling in the park during school hours, 16-year-old Mason doesn't know where to start.
With school, I got kicked out at 14 because of truancy and behaviour problems. I don't like being in the house, so I wouldn't want to do the benefits thing. I'd rather try and find a job and get to doing stuff.
A lot of the young people we've spoken to are smart and capable and articulate, but for one reason or another they've fallen out of the system and no one has pulled them back in.
And that's the issue. They seem to have, certainly from that report, fallen out of the system.
And for a variety of reasons. It was very interesting when that early attempt at welfare reform failed, this government's attempt. There was a lot of talk about the need to invest, first of all. It was to save money, their welfare reform, but the need to invest in what they call pathways to work. And you have to find people who can lead the pathways into work. But this raises issues about if the nature of work is changing, what jobs are available. In that Vox Pop, they're saying there's just nothing apart from going into the army. And so, with this AI revolution, with the cost of employing people, certainly in the leisure sector, which used to be a big employer of young people, pubs, hotels and all the rest of it, what are the work that the pathways can lead towards? It's a big issue that Milburn is exploring in terms of the challenges. But as Salma suggested earlier, the solutions are, he says the health service isn't fit for purpose, blah, blah, blah. Well, this is massive, Welfare clearly does need reform, but it needs to be a bit like beverage in the 40s. It needs to be huge and thought through. What are the pathways to work and what is the work?
Yeah, and those recommendations we know are not coming until much later down in the year. But one of the other things that the report points to is that 6 in 10 have never had a job. And 20 years ago, that figure was closer to 4 in 10.
Yeah, and it's going to get worse according to the report as well. But there's one thing that I think is really striking about this. So, the report was talking very much about people who had issues in school, who have grown up in the care system. And I think one of the things that we actually need to address as a society is whether that number of those children is actually getting bigger. Because this is then going to be a compounding problem of the children who fall out of the system. Why is that happening in the first place? So there is something about what happens at the end state in terms of the economy and employability, but something that goes before that, which is why are children ending up in a situation where they do not have qualifications, where they do have disruptive behaviour, and is that number getting bigger? And it sort of speaks to, children going to school at 5, not being potty trained correctly, not having the right nutrition. And so we definitely also need to look at that end of the scale as well as what's happening in the future, because this is also, graduates who are going to be impacted by AI disruption. So I understand that this is big, But there are places that we can start asking ourselves the right question to extract the right data to find the right solutions.
There are some that say these are all the repercussions of COVID, because we know that young people suffered enormously during that period, and very many haven't even returned to the education system following that period.
Yeah, well, according to the Times, as I was saying earlier, absenteeism from school or exclusion from school is the biggest driving force. And during COVID, of course, that was a big, big theme.
So let us move on, shall we? We're going to move on to the big international story that we've been covering since it started, and that's the war in Iran. The long and confused journey to a potential peace deal between the US and Iran continued today, with Iranian state TV publishing details of a potential agreement. That was quickly rubbished by the White House, with Donald Trump telling his cabinet this evening that he was in no rush to make a deal that wasn't perfect.
It's got to be perfect. I'm not going to do this. I didn't do this to get a crummy agreement. We can make a good deal right now, but maybe not a great deal. And if it's not a great deal, we're not making it. So, because we can make a great deal with this guy right here. And but it's, you know, it's a lot nastier. Probably wouldn't go as quickly. We wouldn't be talking about it as quickly, but it would be foolproof. But I think we're doing very well, Steve. I think we're doing pretty well in terms of the negotiation, but we'll see.
Well, as the diplomacy continues to stall on the ground in both Lebanon and Gaza, the Israeli military has continued its operations. Here's our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons.
Israel has launched significant new military offensives in both Lebanon and Gaza over the past 24 hours. So here is the latest. This was an attack on one of Gaza's busiest market areas. The Israelis were targeting one man, the head of Hamas's military wing, Mohammed Odeh. He was killed only days after starting his job. His predecessor had been killed by the Israelis earlier this month. This time a residential building was hit. You can see here people being taken to hospital. Local medics say that at least 3 Palestinians were killed. Presumably one of them was Mohammed Odeh. Dozens were injured. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, the health ministry says dozens of people have been killed there by Israeli strikes as the Israeli army pushes further into Lebanon. It's one of the deadliest days since so-called ceasefire came into effect between Israel and Hezbollah, the group that is backed and funded by Iran. Israel's military says it's targeted more than 100 Hezbollah sites across southern and eastern Lebanon to stop a growing number of drone attacks that have hit both soldiers and northern Israeli residents. So what has Israel been saying about these strikes? Well, Benjamin Netanyahu is clearly putting pressure on 2 fronts. He's vowed to continue stepping up military action, especially against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Just this week, the Israeli Prime Minister said he had instructed his military, in his words, to press the pedal even harder. But there are many here who wonder whether Netanyahu's aim is to occupy as much land and do as much damage to Hezbollah as possible before a possible new peace deal between America and Iran, because that could bring in a new and potentially much more binding ceasefire in Lebanon.
So the non-existent ceasefire in Lebanon, we have the health ministry saying yesterday, we heard there 31 people killed because of Israeli airstrikes and also 40 injured. This is not a ceasefire.
No, indeed it's not. And I think that, you know, the last point made in that report is the critical one, is that none of this exists in a silo. It is all interconnected with what is happening in Iran. The US is at the forefront of most of the negotiations that are happening in conflict zones in the world. We know that Israel's ultimate aim with, its pressing on with its offensive action in its conflicts has been around Iran, that has, frankly, always maintained its position for Israel not to exist. So there's an existential threat to them as a nation, and I think that that has given Benjamin Netanyahu his justification to continue pressing. If there is a deal, then what we are hoping will come of it is a sort of calming in that region, which is possibly why the White House was always also asking for surrounding nations within the regions to normalise their relationship and relations with Israel. But it feels like it is still a long way away. And whilst that continues, we are going to see, frankly, quite horrifying news about how humanity plays no part in this negotiation.
Israel saying that they are acting against threats on their people. The Israeli people and Hezbollah are using a new type of drone, and therefore their aim is to decimate Hezbollah. It's not a fight against the Lebanese people.
Well, we're not on the ground, so we can't make a judgment beyond. They used to say the same thing to justify some of their actions in Gaza, which have been deemed violating international law repeatedly. I'm afraid it's part of the problem. The Netanyahu regime is part of the problem in trying to get any kind of resolution to what's going on. The attacks on Iran began as a joint US-Israel initiative, and yet Netanyahu's objectives were wholly different to Trump's, as far as Trump was clear about what his objectives were. And it's one of the reasons why we're in this mess. The fact that the current Israel government feels the freedom to do basically what it wants. I don't know, as the British ambassador was reported to be saying, the special relationship is between America and Israel, and it seems to give this Israeli government freedom to do what it wants.
And Salma, is the goal of Israel to cause as much damage and occupy as much land as possible before perhaps a real ceasefire is brought in?
I think that this, as you say, the ceasefire really is non-existent, and continuing with the conflict to be able to inflict in military or strategic terms as much damage as they can before there is a normalisation. I think that is, you know, a potentially valid assessment of what Israel is doing at the moment. But I think everybody's position is so entrenched now that there has to be some kind of break, not just for consumers in the US and the West and all over the world because of the Strait of Hormuz, but also because there is this continuing unfolding humanitarian issue where people are dying and it looks like that we are seeing indiscriminate action that is impacting civilians. And that has to be a feature of why we are trying to achieve peace. And I do find it worrying that that doesn't seem to be, you know, what Western powers are focusing on. It's not to say that people don't feel legitimate in the actions that are being taken, but surely this is not the solution that anybody is looking for. We need to find peace pretty quickly.
Trump faces a real dilemma. I mean, he's very self-confident in these press conferences and public appearances. But American consumers, as Salma suggests, want this to end. And yet the only deal currently on offer appears to be one that is flakier and worse than the Obama deal that he was scathing about for so long. But in America, this wasn't popular from the beginning.
But it's the term perfect deal. And the reality is...
But there is no such thing.
There's no such thing, not in diplomacy, not in politics. There is no such thing as 100%.
No.
And as we used to say when I was back in government, 70% is a first-class degree. If you can take the win, take the win.
Yeah,
but he's saying he's not prepared to make any concessions at all.
And then he says, if we don't get it, we'll go in and finish it. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of imprecision around. Perfect deal, we'll go in and finish it. Meaningless, almost.
Yeah. How will it all end, and the implications for Lebanon? We don't know. We are at the whim of one man, seemingly. Coming up, the full extent of the threat posed by Russia to UK interests is laid bare by the new head of the spy agency, GCHQ. Stay tuned to find out more.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting. The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
You are watching The Wrap. Now, the full extent of the threat posed by Russia to UK interests were laid bare today as the new head of the spy agency, GCHQ, spoke publicly for the first time. Anne Butler also set out the cost of the Ukraine war to Russia, saying that her agency estimated that almost 500,000 Russian soldiers had been killed in the conflict. Here's our Security and Defence Editor, Deborah Haynes.
It's more than 4 years since Vladimir Putin launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the head of GCHQ has just revealed how many Russian troops the UK believes has been killed. The figure is staggering.
As we remain steadfast in our support for Ukraine, Putin is going backwards on the battlefield, with new intelligence showing that almost 500,000 Russian soldiers have been killed since the conflict began.
Anne Butler was giving the first of what will be an annual GCHQ lecture. She used it to warn of the growing threat still posed by Moscow and the risk of miscalculation that could lead to wider war.
Russia is scaling up its daily hybrid activity against the UK and Europe, stretching from the seabed to cyberspace, relentlessly targeting critical infrastructure, democratic processes, supply chains, and public trust. But let me be clear that in the face of such aggression and chaos, GCHQ is working tirelessly with intelligence and defence partners to degrade and reduce the Russian threat.
The speech wasn't just about the Kremlin. The spy chief also talked about risks and opportunities posed by emerging technologies, from artificial intelligence to quantum computing and cyberspace to outer space. She said everyone on this new digital frontline must think more carefully about their own defences.
At home, that means taking important action to switch from passwords to pass keys. And for wider society, it means hardwiring security into new technologies, protecting supply chains, and making cybersecurity 10 times more urgent.
She gave the speech here at Bletchley Park, the wartime home of GCHQ, and a reminder of the vital importance of intelligence work at a time of global uncertainty.
So, I mean, the clear message there, one of the messages that, you know, we have to stay really vigilant, that Russia is on the war path, maybe not literally, but sometimes in terms of cyber, and everyone in the UK has to be on their toes.
Well, it's this is really, really critical because the government in the King's speech have talked about cyber resilience and a bill that's there. And one of the things that lots of military, particularly those ones that border Russia, and in the Finnish case, this is absolutely true, that they are thinking about how they remain vigilant against Russian threats. And so I think that some of the legislation that's coming in is underpinning exactly what she's talking about. also interesting that she is articulating what the Russian losses look like on their side, because I think we do get a feeling that the president of Russia is pretty happy to play a waiting game and just, continuously send people to the front lines and not have to really suffer the consequences. I think what I heard there was fascinating, is that there are shifts, even in a society like Russia's, where people are starting to feel, if not the economic slowdown from sanctions, etc., but also the personal, about people being sent to the front and people losing loved ones in their communities, in their families. I think that is a really important thing to understand, because it might give us the shape of the end of this conflict at some point too.
Yeah, fascinating to hear that figure revealed by her in that inaugural annual lecture at GCHQ. Nearly 500,000 Russian troops have been killed in the war in Ukraine.
And as your correspondent said, it's or whoever, it was a staggering figure, 500,000. And I think it raises all sorts of issues, one of which is, as Salma says, how long is that sustainable, that you carry on sending people? Another 100,000, million being killed. But it also suggests to me, and sorry to quote Blair again, I was critical of a lot of the Blair stuff, but where I agree with him is he thinks it's highly unlikely after this Putin will say, right now, we'll go somewhere else and somewhere else. This clearly has stretched resources to a point which is in itself becoming unsustainable. However, cyber attacks is a different issue. That you don't throw bodies never to return to Russia with cyber attacks. So I think much of the focus now needs to be defending institutions from cyber attacks. That's where the focus
But
needs
what
to be.
Anne Keyes-Butler was saying, that it even comes down to the individual, that everyone has to be vigilant. And one thing she was saying is that everyone must think about their own defence at home. People should switch from passwords to pass keys, and we all have to be thinking about how we can improve our security.
Yeah, absolutely, because you never know how somebody might be trying to access the system. And it's not just kind of, I mean, I don't think there's anything exciting on my emails in particular that the Russian state might be wanting to get their hands on.
I don't know.
Unless they want to do my admin, that's absolutely fine. But I think that when we think about how we log into something, you might not necessarily think about your part in a wider system and how that could potentially bring a network down. So phishing requests, and through one device, how people might be able to access other systems. I think that is also really important. And now that you've said it, I really must spend some of tomorrow doing a bit of a check on that, just to work out whether I'm secure or not.
Well, actually, when I heard her say that, I just turned down a request to move from a password to a passkey. So I thought, I don't need to bother with that. But the fact that she's saying, GCHQ director, that we all have to make these little steps really did quite worry me.
Yeah, well, you're turning to me. I don't know, what is a passkey compared with a password? I haven't even got to the point where I understand the difference. So obviously I'm vulnerable to a cyber attack right away. But no, these things, it seems to me this is where any country can become vulnerable very, very quickly. And we've seen it with the NHS. That is such an obvious target unless you have the most sophisticated defence against a cyber attack.
The point is, you don't need a sophisticated defence. What you need is for people to understand how it's going to be accessed, because quite often cyber attacks happen at the phishing level, where you just click a link in your email and all of a sudden you get malware into your machine. What I think would be really helpful, alongside what is, a very grandiose format of giving a speech at GCHQ, is a proper public service campaign that really says is what. And I say again, I'm a trustee at Policy Exchange, a think tank in the UK. We've had lots of work, around this, about what does it take to build a resilient nation, and there are other countries that do this, and so we need to get serious about how we build resilience, and that it's something that's understood across the nation and not just in these small bits of information that come out.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very interesting point. And maybe you could head the campaign or kick it off.
Happy to.
Call GCH.
I'll help out. I mean, you know, there's public education.
We'll know what a passkey is first.
Yeah, better find out more about it. But public education is a really important part of that. And actually, just doing an event today at GCHQ or whatever, it hardly begins to educate us on what will be required.
But the wider point is that you have to hardwire security into new technologies, as Anki was saying today. Let's take a look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers for you now, starting with the Mail, which leads with the report landing tomorrow from former Labour Health Secretary Alan Milburn over the issue of young people not in education, employment or training. And that's also the lead story on the Eye, call for welfare reforms to save young people from becoming a lost generation. Front page of The Express is Sir Tony Blair branding Ed Miliband's net zero plans a fantasy amidst rising bills and prices. The Times also leading on Labour's net zero plans, reporting that Sir Keir Starmer is under mounting pressure from his cabinet to rethink the party's opposition to new North Sea drilling. Temperature falls, costs rise. That's the lead story in tomorrow's Metro, as we learn the price cap is going up 13% this summer. Be safe in water or more will die. A stark warning as 7 children die in water-related incidents during the heatwave. The Financial Times is leading with the news that the official fund for Donald Trump's Board of Peace is empty, which could leave its plans to rebuild Gaza in limbo. And on the front page of the Star, it's a coming drone. This is the news that England's World Cup base in Kansas City will be guarded by hunter-catcher drones to stop rival teams spying on training. But we're not starting with the Star. We're going to start with the Mail, and this is the story the ex-Labour Health Minister, Alan Milburn, has done this report, a lost generation of NEETs, not in education, employment or training. And he paints a very bleak picture, but not with many answers to the questions that he poses, Salma.
No, indeed. You know, he's sort of talking about people falling out of the system and there being a real rising challenge as we go forward of young people not being able to get on the job ladder. It's sort of slightly worrying that the recommendations aren't going to come alongside this report, that they're going to come down later. I think politically that might be difficult because of the vacuum that it leaves and what ideas are actually going to fill it and what political push is going to happen in the meantime. But it is incredibly worrying. And as we discussed earlier, I think it's not just about what happens at the end of the process and what you're going to go and see in the jobs market, but it's also about how are people falling into this NEET situation in the first place. Is it that the number of children in care is going up? Is it that the education provision is not fulfilling obligations to certain types of children that might have difficulties learning? Is it that we are facing a generation that was also impacted by COVID? So I think we need some data points about how we got into this position and why this number is potentially expanding, as well as looking at what the job opportunities are further down the line.
One of the things that Alan Milburn talks about in his report is a bedroom generation and suffering with anxiety and linking that to social media and driving this economic inactivity amongst young people.
Yeah, but also, as summarised on the Mail front page, is it's much worse, according to the Milburn report, than in Greece, France and Spain and other equivalent countries. So why? And it seems to me that the motif of the last general election still applies. You know, the running theme of the last election, nothing works, and Britain needs a change of government and things need to start working again. And here, clearly, the situation is more worrying and critical than other equivalent countries. Now, I haven't read the report, we've just read the reports of the report, and it'll be interesting to see why he thinks that is the case. And maybe within that, we can start coming up with measures, and it will need agile, active government intervention to address some of these things.
Yeah, my cynical head is really describing the distance between the report and the recommendations as perhaps a period where other people can make suggestions that perhaps the government can steal. But I didn't say that.
Could be true.
The Metro heating bills up. Britain's gone balmy. Millions of families face a scorching 13% rise in bills for heating their homes from as early as the end of next month. Salma.
Yes, this is troubling because, of course, usually you don't see these kinds of rises when you're going into summer. And I think the thing that I would be concerned about as a result of this, because we know what's driving these price increases, it is the wholesale price of gas, which is being impacted by the conflict in Iran. I do worry about what this is going to do in winter and when we see another price increase and what that is going to do to the cost of living. But then, of course, this is going to have to force the government to rethink the way that it is thinking about perhaps the net zero costs on energy prices and what more it can actually do to intervene without providing direct subsidies. I think there's a cost implication to it, but energy security and bringing down those bills is going to be really at the top of the government's agenda.
What do you think people will make of the advice from Ofgem Chief Executive Tim Jarvis saying that he's advising families to explore fixed tariffs or use different payment methods to cope?
Well, there's nothing wrong with exploring these, but the fundamentals are unchanged, which is as long as this Iran crisis continues, there's going to be an energy crisis. And at the moment, the resolution is not at all clear. And if this is continuing into the autumn, this is going to be the biggest political challenge because the government, or Keir Starmer has been saying, look, cost of living is his priority. And you can see why he says it. He looks at the focus groups and they all say cost of living is the top thing. But it's not wholly, by any means, in the government's control, the cost of living. And it's made clear, or Rachel Reeves has made clear, they're not going to intervene in the same way, obviously, that Liz Truss did to astronomical cost at keeping bills down when she was fleetingly Prime Minister. But it is the autumn and the winter where this will become potentially a huge story. Less so in the summer. People will use a lot less energy with 34 degrees temperatures out there in the real world.
But the chief executive of Ofgem is basically, I think, maybe parroting Martin Lewis. So I think there is some good advice out there on how to change your tariff and how to have different payment plans.
Martin Lewis is running the country, basically.
I think there is a campaign to make him PM, actually. Coming up next, we'll take a look at more of the top stories in the newspapers. Do stay with us.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
We're still taking you through the newspapers. We're going to kick off this section with a look. We're going to go inside the Eye. And the story there is Burnham supporters come out swinging after ex-PM's attack. Who's speaking up for Andy Burnham? Salma?
Well, I haven't seen who's actually speaking up for Andy Burnham, apart from the fact... Oh, it's Luke Charters, who's a moderate MP, it says here, who backs Burnham, saying that Blair's diagnosis misses the point. So I think this is another chapter in the Labour family feud that's sort of unravelling, I mean, unfortunately, the whole country at this point in time. I do think it's interesting, though, that you have Burnham, who served in a Blair cabinet. You have Gordon Brown and Harriet Harman returning to advisory positions, and we've talked about Sir Tony Blair more than we've talked about Sir Keir Starmer this evening. And it does really feel like we're having a bit of a late 90s retread in our music, our fashion and our politics. And I'm not sure that going into this, if Burnham is going to go for the Labour leadership, continuing that level of feuding instead of trying to unify all these various factions within the party, is actually going to bode well for government unity and government efficiency.
You mentioned there Gordon Brown being called back in an advisory role. I heard a commentator today saying that perhaps Sir Tony Blair was a little bit miffed that he hadn't been called upon for advice, and hence his 5,000-word
Quite possibly.
essay.
Not the only reason, but perhaps a reason. But I take a different view from Sam. I think this might be quite significant. Labour have had problems breaking away from Blair and the Blair era, especially Keir Starmer, who was hugely influenced by Blair, Peter Mandelson and others in the build-up to the election, in the way that the Tories have really struggled to break away from Margaret Thatcher. I wonder whether this may be a moment where Labour do break away from him, in that Burnham himself is going to respond in detail to the Blair critique tomorrow, I think. And we've got an article in tomorrow's Guardian from Wes Streeting where he distances him, and he was seen as a Blairite. Now, of course, they're all positioning themselves for a possible leadership contest when their membership is in a different place to Tony Blair. But I think they genuinely believe he has misread the current political mood on many fronts. So perhaps instead of it being a wallowing of 1997-style nostalgia, there's going to be quite a move away from the sort of Blairite interpretation of what's happening.
Right, we're just going to move on to the Eye, because we're running out of time. I want to get this story in, and that is that the man who created Malcolm Tucker is writing the next Paddington film, we read in the Eye. Who is he, Salma?
Well, this is Armando Iannucci, brilliant British writer. I have to say, the way that they framed it, that it's going to be the writer that created Malcolm Tucker going on to... I mean, is this a new dark chapter of Paddington? A new sweary chapter of Paddington? You know, is that what we're expecting?
But remember, Hugh Grant played a baddie, didn't he, in Paddington? So maybe there'll be a Malcolm Tucker-type figure in the new film.
Hugh Grant was a brilliant baddie. He should do more baddies. He's actually quite good at it.
He was very good as a baddie. The films so far have been wonderful. And he's a huge talent, so I'm sure the next one will be good.
Ooh, will Paddington take a more sinister line?
I'm not sure that he's going to be having tea with the king, is he? You know, in a new Malcolm Tucker-esque in Iannucci style.
No, I cannot imagine Paddington swearing, so I think we're safe.
We're safe on that front, if on no other.
No, notoriously well-mannered.
Yes,
Paddington Bear.
Exactly. Stephen Salma, thank you so much for taking us through the papers. Coming up in the sport, Crystal Palace become European champions after winning the UEFA Conference League.
Big stories don't always come from big cities.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, okay?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.